Before we discuss matrices, let's revisit Microsoft Excel, where we can analyze data within spreadsheets. Here you're looking at the sales for an outdoor store that sells tents, sleeping bags, pads, backpacks, and headlamps over the course of a month, divided into week 1, week 2, week 3, 4, and 5. If we look horizontally across a row, we can see the sales of tents per week. If we look vertically up and down a column, we can see the sales for each item in that specific week. One thing we may want to do is to look at total weekly sales. To do that, we can write a formula equal the sum, open parentheses, of the amount of tents, sleeping bags, pads, backpacks, and headlamps sold within that first week. Close the parentheses and hit enter. And you can see that value now appears here. We can now click back on that cell and find the green square in the bottom right-hand corner. When the plus sign appears, left click and drag that formula to the right, and that will now apply that to our second, third, fourth, and fifth week or column. We can do a similar action across the rows to determine the item sales. So here, if I write equals sum parentheses, I can add the number of tents sold during week 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or the total number of tents sold during that month. And once again, I can drag that formula down to apply it to all of the different items down to headlamps. As a store owner, I may be interested in seeing how Store 1 and Store 2 compare. So first, I'll quickly calculate the weekly sales for each item at the second store, and also the total item sales for the month. One thing that may be interesting is to account for the total sales of the combined stores. So to do that, I've created this box over here where we're looking at the combined contribution from Store 1 and 2. So if I want to know the amount of sales week 1 for tents at both stores, I can simply add this box and this box. If I drag that formula over and down, it'll calculate it for the remaining parameters. And if I click on a random box, I can double check the formula. So here, week 4 backpacks is adding F8 and F19. F8 is right here, week 4 backpacks. F19 is week 4 backpacks for Store 2. So that looks appropriate. And so now we can see our weekly sales totals across the bottom for both stores, or our total item sales in this column. An owner may also be interested in better understanding the performance of one store versus another. So we can directly compare Store 1 and Store 2. For example, I can take the number of tents sold week 1 at Store 1 and subtract that from the number of tents sold week 1 at Store 2. In this case, the sales contribution from tents was $975 more at Store 1 than Store 2. And I'll now apply that to the rest of the data. And in this case, all of the values are positive, which means that every week Store 1 outperformed Store 2. If we look at the item sales, that trend still holds true, except now you can see that over the course of a month, Store 2 sold more sleeping pads than Store 1. Next, we will look at how we can apply multiplication or division to our spreadsheets instead of the operations of addition and subtraction that we currently did. So if I scroll down my spreadsheet, Here I'm interested in calculating the sales tax for each item across the month at store 1. And so the sales tax is indicated here as 0.075 or 7.5%. So if I select this cell for week 1 tenths, I can take my sales from week 1 and I can multiply that by the sales tax. Before I drag this formula to the rest of the spreadsheet, I want to put a money symbol or a dollar sign in front of the A and the 25. This tells Excel to always reference this cell and to not drag the formula across. So now you can see when I fill in the spreadsheet, it is always referring back to cell A25. Once again, we can sum these for the columns and the rows. To see this again, consider building a store in a new market that has a population size of 1.5 times more than the population around store 1. So here we may expect that sales should increase by 1.5. Let me quickly change this so it shows decimal points instead of rounding. So here, I can look at the number of tenths sold week 1 at store 1, and I can multiply that by 1.5, and we now expect, instead of selling $3,900 worth of tenths, we would sell closer to $6,000 worth of tenths because of the larger market size. Just as we did with sales tax, I'm going to put a dollar symbol in front of the J and the 26 to freeze it to that cell. And now when I drag across, J26 is maintained. And so to complete this lesson, we'll sum these values up as well. So in conclusion, we've seen how to look at spreadsheets, add and subtract different data sets, and multiply entire data sets by something called a scalar, which in this case was either the sales tax, 0.075, or a multiplication factor, 1.5. Thank you.